Okay, it's the end of June and I thought I wasn't gonna have much time to read because I was actually gaming non-stop. But the thing is, I was only like intensely gaming in the middle 2 weeks of June. At the start and at the end of June, I still read quite a bit. So in total, I managed to read 14 books, which is not bad. I think it's quite an achievement. So I think like instead of going by the chronological order in which I read them, it might be better to group them according to series because there are 2 series. So the first is the Rokesby series. This is known as the Bridgerton prequels because it has to do with the earlier generation of the Bridgertons. So you know, like Violet and Edmund, we kind of get to see them when they are newlyweds. So they are like 19, around there. Alright, so the Rokesby series is about the 4 Rokesby brothers. The Earl had 4 sons. 3 of these sons ended up marrying a Bridgerton. So for book 1, I have the physical copy. Because of Miss Bridgerton, in this book it's about Billy, Sibylla Bridgerton and George Rokesby. They are enemies to lovers, kind of like since childhood she never liked him, and she thought that she would end up marrying one of his younger brothers, either Andrew or Edward, but their fighting turned into something else. So it's quite romantic, I would say. Billy Bridgerton is interesting. She's like a tomboy and she runs her father's estates. So after she married into the Rokesby's clan, she managed their estates. Okay, second, the girl with the make-believe husband. This is book 2. It has to do with Edward Rokesby, and when he went to war he had a best friend, and then the best friend had a younger sister called Cecilia, and actually he kind of like fell in love with Cecilia through her letters to her brother that she wrote in copious quantities. So when Cecilia did not receive news of her brother, she went over to look for him. She couldn't find him, but in the end she managed to find Edward, so she lied about being his wife. She lied about being his wife so that she could take care of him, because she figured that this was her brother's best friend that she had also kind of been corresponding to through her brother. So I'm not gonna spoil it for you. So it's like but the trope I guess here is like fake marriage, but only one side thinks it's fake. Okay, book 3 I borrowed on Libby. It's about Poppy and Andrew. So Poppy Bridgerton is a distant cousin of the Bridgerton clan. She came over to visit her cousins, and then she ended up getting involved with Andrew's job. So Andrew, he pretends to be a privateer, like he has a ship and then he sells cargo overseas, but actually he is working for the crown, like he is a courier, if you would say it, but for like intelligence. So Poppy, in her explorations, accidentally discovered like a trove of crates that actually Andrew was supposed to transport overseas. They contain important documents lah. So he had no choice but to kind of like kidnap her and put her on his ship while he went to Portugal. And then in the process they had to share one room. There was only one bed, but he slept on the floor, and then after that he went to sleep in a different room. But they did fall in love on that ship, and then after that they get kidnapped by thugs. I will not spoil the ending for you, but I feel like out of the entire series this was the most enjoyable to read. Yeah. Okay, so book 4 is about Georgiana Bridgerton and Nicholas Rokesby. They are like the youngest children of each clan. Somebody fell in love with Georgiana, so he kind of kidnapped her in a carriage, and then after that her reputation was ruined because he went around bragging to everybody that like he had his way with her. So she couldn't get married anymore. Like she was either gonna die a spinster or she would be forced to marry the man that basically tried to like sexually assault her, but he wasn't so nefarious, he was just kind of useless. In the process, the Rokesby patriarch decided to call back his younger son in the middle of his medical study, so he's damn annoyed. And he's like, what could you possibly have called me back for? Don't you know this is the middle of exams? I'm gonna have to make up for it later on. And then the father kind of pressured him into marrying Georgiana, and he's just like, why would I marry her? I don't even love her. But in the end, out of a sense of duty, he proposes. She realizes that he's doing out of a sense of duty. She rejects him. So there's a lot of like push and pull in that relationship dynamic. In the end, they do get married, and then it's a marriage of convenience, but they do fall in love with each other in the end. So I think that compared to the original Bridgerton series, the Rokesby series is more mature. The Bridgerton series focuses a lot on like London, about the season, about society, about the rules, the hierarchy, what a woman needs to do, what a woman shouldn't do, etc, etc. That is the Regency era lah. But then the Rokesby series takes place in the countryside where Aubrey Hall is. So I guess things are a bit more relaxed there. There isn't this like pressure for like the women to, oh, I must go to this ball and that ball and whatever ball in order to attract a suitor. I must have proposals, I must get married. You know, there is no like desperation because it's removed from London. The women are out in society, but it doesn't mean that they are like under the same amount of pressure that, let's say, Daphne was. So it's also a bit more mature because I feel like the books in the Bridgerton series up to book 5 out of 8 out of book 5 up till book 5 of the Bridgerton series, they did follow a kind of formula, which is like they fall in love and then they want to consummate, but then they cannot consummate yet because they haven't get married, so they try to rush the wedding and then they consummate. So that is like the template. But then in the Rokesby series, they kind of didn't wait. So I'm like, alright, things are different now. Things are different. So that is the Rokesby series, the Bridgerton prequels. After that, I also read the Smythe-Smith quartet. It's very unwieldy to say, so I'll just call it the SS quartet, okay? So the Smythe-Smith quartet focuses on the 3 cousins in the family, along with one of the girl's brother. So the SS quartet is like a musical that's held every year. It is featured in every single Bridgerton novel because it's just so bad, right? In the first book, we have Honoria, and Honoria, she falls in love with her brother's best friend. So her brother was chased out of town because he was at the club one day and then he won at cards against somebody who never lost, and then they got into blows because it was like, you cheated, and then how can you accuse me? I challenge you to a duel, let's meet at sunrise. And then they meet at sunrise and then they accidentally shot each other because they were both hungover. I mean, the right thing to do is to shoot in the sky lah, or like aim somewhere else, but they were both like so drunk that they shot each other. So after that, the other guy, his name is Hugh Prentice, his father Ramsgate, was extremely angry because he viewed Hugh as like his heir. So he thought that the gunshot ruined Hugh's chances at procreating, so he vowed to kill Daniel to take revenge lah. And Daniel was forced to flee the country. He fled to Europe for a few years, leaving his mother and his sister distraught, and the entire family by extension was also distraught and a bit disgraced. Honoria and Sarah and Iris, they were meant to debut that year, but they had to delay their debut, and the year that they weren't allowed to go out, there were 14 eligible gentlemen that managed to get married. So understandably, they are a bit disappointed about it because afterwards the marriage mark wasn't so good. Yeah, this is in London, by the way. So Honoria and Marcus, they kind of fell in love with each other. So it's like falling in love with your brother's best friend kind of story. And this time period overlaps with Colin's story, which is book 4 of the Bridgerton series, because Colin does talk to Honoria. I remember this, like, and now we know the other side. So book 2 is about Daniel. After he comes back, he falls in love with his cousin's governess. So he has a cousin called Sarah. Sarah has 3 younger sisters who are under the care of a governess called Anne Winter. But Anne Winter has a very checkered past because she is actually running away from an ex-boyfriend of sorts. He kind of took advantage of her naivety, and then afterwards she realized that she had been cheated by him. He was in fact going to go and marry someone else. He tried to force himself on her again, and then she, in self-defense, cut his face. So he was very angry, and then he vowed to like hunt her down. Yeah, his name is George Sherville, and she has been like undercover lah. So she came from like the gentry, but then she had to pretend to be like a penniless governess because she couldn't even go back anymore. Her father had no choice but to disown her. And then after that, Daniel sees and falls in love with her at first sight. And then after that, it was just it was very exciting because Sherville makes a comeback, and then he tries to like kill Anne. He nearly did, but then Anne was saved by Daniel and Marcus and Hugh Prentice, because actually Hugh and Daniel became good friends. Like Hugh wasn't as angry at Daniel as his father was. Yeah, and he also regretted his actions later on. So they became good friends and they went to rescue Anne, his fiance, and then they got married. So that is book 2. Book 3 is about Sarah. So Sarah, she could not forgive Hugh Prentice for ruining her marriage prospects. So she really hated him, and he also thought that she was kind of like really dramatic, like always behaving like a character in a novel. So they didn't get along. After like they spent some time together, she realized that actually he wasn't as bad as he thought, and he was also kind of really good with her younger sisters. So they fell in love. It was like an enemies to lovers kind of situation. And she also managed to resolve the long-standing conflict between Hugh and Hugh's father, Ramsgate, and also Daniel. So it takes a clever woman to fix that problem, and she did it. That was like the highlight of the book, I think. It was the climax, definitely. Yeah. And book 4, I have a physical copy. I had to hunt it down because I wanted to borrow it on Libby, but then books 1 to 3 were available and book 4 wasn't, which is very strange, right? So I went to search on the NLB app. There was nothing except for the audiobook version. Yeah, it will not even show you the physical book. You have to go and open the audiobook page, and then you press formats. Then it will redirect you to the hard copy page. Then you can check the availability of it in the libraries in Singapore. So I had to go around to look for it because one library said that there was a book available. I went there, and then they searched all the shelves, the display shelves, the nearby shelves, the actual shelf it was supposed to be on, and it wasn't there. So in the end I had to go to another library. But it was worth it because book 4 is definitely the best book of the SS Quartet. I just think that like when there is like a central mystery to it, a book just becomes so much better. So the central mystery in this is that Iris, she was never the kind of woman who would attract attention because she's very pale. Like her skin is super white, her hair is super fair, so she never attracted attention from men, and she always feels very overlooked. So she's kind of a wallflower, but she doesn't mind being one. And then one day when she was performing in the musical the next year, she was spotted by a man called Richard Kenworthy, and we know that he is in a rush to marry Iris, but we do not know why. Yeah, you do not find out until like okay, yeah, in fact you do not even know like what is going on until almost close to 300 pages. Then the mystery is revealed to you. And then even after that, you're like left wondering, how are they going to fix this? Because it is a dilemma. There is no way to fix it. And then another twist comes that makes you realize, huh? Oh my gosh, I've been misled this entire time. And then a solution appears. And it's just so satisfying. But for majority of the book, like this much of the book, you do not know what is going on. And then the solution only comes like much later on towards the end, when you're like, how could they possibly fix this in a handful of pages? They do. They fix it in a handful of pages. I would classify this definitely as like fake marriage with a lot of slow burn. Like you know, you read the other books, usually like the characters like burn very fast and then they burn very hard, but then I guess you want to call it the satisfaction, or like the satisfying ending, it only comes like right at the very end. I do not want to spoil this for anyone, because I was actually like reading this with my partner, and then every time he said something I had to like keep it to myself, because when I read it myself, when I reached the twists, I just went, what? I was shocked. And I think like that kind of, it takes a lot to shock me. I'm not usually easily shocked, and usually I can kind of see the plot twist coming. So I really enjoy it when a story goes to an unexpected place. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books. 8 books so far. Okay, I didn't just read Julia Quinn novels, I read other things too. So for Japanese books, I put the cover here. I had the hard copy that I borrowed from my friend, but then I lent it to another friend and he has yet to return it to me, so the cover will have to suffice. So this is Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. She is quite popular nowadays. I feel like everyone is reading her books, but Convenience Store Woman is like a 5-star read to me. I just thought it was so funny. I didn't really enjoy the incel character, but I understood what function he played and I understood what he was meant to represent. And I also think that like novels where the women protagonists do not like necessarily fit in, but then they're forced to because they want to belong in society, I feel like books like that can either be a real drag or they can be really fun to read, and this book was in the second category. It was satisfying at the end, and also the details of like the protagonist working a convenience store job were extremely believable, and I didn't understand why until I read the back that it said that the author actually worked in a convenience store for like 2 decades, which everything made sense after that. Yeah, so that's one book. The second one I read, The Inugami Curse by Seishi Yokomizo. This is a classic detective story. The detective, he's not like super cool like Sherlock Holmes, but he's kind of like quirky and he's eccentric, and he has like messy hair, and then he oversleeps, and then he doesn't dress super well, and he's kind of like loud and bawdy, but that's okay because he's supposed to be an unconventional Japanese detective. So in this story, there is a series of murders that happen because a super rich man died, and then his household goes into a frenzy over a will. It sounds like a drama, but this is what happened in the book, and I just enjoyed the spectacle, you know, like the crime scenes were very imaginative. I felt that reading it, it wasn't gory at all, even though I understand that if I saw it in person I would register it as gory, but when you read it, it doesn't. And also like the book itself is written in like this slightly gossipy tone, so it's like you're reading a gossip sheet or something like that, and you're just like going into the lives of these rich people whose lives are getting even more interesting with murders. This is the kind of book it is. I would recommend it, definitely. Okay, for Chinese books, I read a small one. It's called Radish by Mo Yan. I've read 2 of her other books. I have them actually. One is called Frog, and the other one I cannot remember. But Frog was a very painful read. Like, it physically hurt my heart to read it. And Radish is another one of those books, but instead of focusing on like women, it focuses on a little boy who, on the outside, people think that he's special needs or something because he doesn't really react or behave the way normal children or normal people do. But the only reason why he's so out of it is because he has like a 6th sense or something. He can transcend the harsh realities of his living conditions, and he can just see the beauty in everything. He can see the beauty in water. His 5 senses are fully engaged, you know, the sight, the smell, the taste, everything. He's just living in the moment, and that's why he's so out of it, which then contrasts with everyone around him. It's wartime, you know, they are laboring, they are building a dam, something like that, and he's the only one who just seems untouched by it all. Okay, for Korean novels, I read If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha. So I thought this was going to be a book about plastic surgery, but it ended up being a book about friendships between women. In fact, I'm not so sure whether that is the intention, but that is the takeaway I got from it. So it kind of revolves around like 5 girls. They live either with each other as flatmates, or they live near each other as in neighbors, next door, upstairs, whatever. And they all have very different lives, and their lives are just very difficult. Very difficult. Like, they came from the countryside, they came to Seoul hoping to live their dreams, hoping to earn enough money. One has a mother to support, one wants to be beautiful, etc., that kind of thing. And one is like dating a rich man who turned out to be a cheater. When you read it, you know from the very start it's social critique, because it doesn't shy away from ugliness at all. In fact, it also tries to give you a glimpse into like the underground nightlife, like what does it mean to be a sex worker. And I feel that the author really humanizes the characters. You may not agree with them, and you may not like think that they are particularly charitable in their thoughts towards others, but at the end of the day, they are people to be sympathized with. That's how I feel. Okay, next. Also, it's Korean writer, The Incendiaries. It's about a cult. So I saw the cover, right? I was like, oh, it's so colorful. I wonder whether it's an exciting read. And I read it, and it's not exciting per se, because of the writing style. The writing style I would describe as elegant. The prose definitely is elegant, but it's not the most accessible. That's how I would say it. Yeah. So it's about a couple. The girl, she's still dealing with her grief of losing her mother. She thinks it's her fault because she was the one behind the wheel the night they had the car accident. The guy, he is dealing with a different kind of grief, and his mother has her own set of problems, and he's also short on money. So the girl kind of ends up being attracted to a cult because she thinks that this cult is going to help her see the face of God again. And after that, he tries to save her, but he's unable to, and their relationship just fractures irreparably. And then after that, she ends up bombing clinics that provide abortion on behalf of the cult, and she becomes like a wanted criminal. I mean, from the very start, it starts with a bomb, so there's no surprise there. I guess like it was more of the journey of how she fell into the cult's clutches, and also you get to really see her boyfriend's desperation and his need to save her. And then for books by Western authors, I read this one. It's called Far From You by Tess, Sharpe. So I know about the controversy. People have been sending her death threats because she refused to review the star signs of the 2 girls in the book. I just think it's super wacky to treat an author that way. Like, you should be thanking them that they wrote a book you can enjoy. Why are you harassing them? I just don't get it. So this book, it was good. It was really good. Like, I think the last time I read a book for teenagers that made me feel that way was when I was a teenager myself, like perhaps more than 10 years ago. The book was called The Candy Darlings. I read it so many times. It was very memorable to me. I felt like it changed me in some ways after I read it, but there wasn't explicit queer representation in that book. However, there is explicit queer representation in this book. So it's about 2 best friends. One day, one of them is shot by a masked attacker, and then the attacker also planted some drugs on the protagonist to make it seem like she was the one who wanted to go to a drug deal, and then it went wrong, and then her friend died for it. But she wasn't. She was clean. And this book is a lot about struggling with a painkiller addiction, because she got into an accident when she was younger because of her best friend's older brother who is like in love with her. So our protagonist, she's bi, but she has always been in love with her best friend. And this best friend, she is not straight, like she's lesbian, but she cannot come out to her religious parents or her religious family, and she dates like boys as a cover lah. So Far From You was very affecting. I felt that it adequately portray the struggles that come with having a disability, because the protagonist, she has a disability when her leg could not fully recover from the car accident. It's an accident that extends up to her back, and then she has to go for therapy, she has to go for cortisol shots, everything. It's all depicted, but her pain is never minimized or trivialized, but it's not all she is. Yeah, and she fights through it. So I feel that rather than being one of those books that like makes the person with the disability seem like an unlikely hero, or like a poor victim that has to be sympathized with, a poor hero that has to be pitied, the author does a very good job showing her disability without making it seem like this is all she is. And of course, I appreciate the representation. I thought that it was very touching, and it made a lot of sense also because of the depth of their friendship, and they were childhood best friends from the very start. Yep, so that is the 8 books, the 2 Japanese books, the 1 Chinese book, the 2 Korean books, and then the 1 English book. So 14 books in June. July, I know I always say that I don't have time to read because I'm very busy, and then it turns out in the end I do have time to read even though I am busy. But I honestly think that this time I really am super busy and I will not have the time to read because I need to sleep. I'm just so tired. I'm like exhausted. You will not believe how tired I am. I feel like the work is endless. I'm just getting swamped. Every time I want to sit down and do the work, and then there's a lot of other small tasks that I have to do. It just eats up my time, and then I don't get to do my work. But then by the time I'm done doing the small tasks, I'm so tired, I need to sleep, I can't do my work, so I push it off to the next day, and then it's just endless. It's endless. So I need to figure out what to do about it, and I don't think I will be able to read as much as I have in the past starting now. Yeah, it's like crunch time, but a long time. It's going to be a long crunch time. Yep. Okay. Oh, the weather is nice today. That's great. Okay, I'm gonna go out. Bye bye.